And welcome to Cannabis Talk radio program. It's called Cannabis. It's called Cannabis Talk A to Z with Frankie Boyer. And we are doing this because there is so much to talk about. And every week we find fascinating practitioners and doctors and lawyers and you name it, nutritionists. By the way, joining us today is someone who knows quite a bit about the hemp world. He is Mark Goldman, partner at Hemp Public Relations. They specialize in TV, radio, and newspaper placement for the cannabis industry. They are fabulous, fabulous people, and we have so much to talk about in the business of hemp, the business of cannabis. Mark Goldman, always wonderful. Welcome to the program. I just wanted to read before we got going and give you, I want your thoughts on this. I have a little piece that I cut out from USA Today from 2016, and it said, North American consumption spent $6.7 billion on legal marijuana products in 2016, up 34% from 2015. Up 34% in 1 year. Crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy.
You know what? It's crazy. Thank you for bringing me back on your show. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. This should have been done years and years ago. Marijuana, cannabis, hemp has never killed anybody ever.
No, it really hasn't. But more importantly, I just have to say, Mark, that it's the lack of education. It's politicians. It's individuals, business people. They're not understanding the story, and that's part of it.
I think it's the old school politicians, the old school business people.
No, let me tell you. I have to tell you, I was at my city council meeting for the candidates in Boston. Every one of them is like in their early 30s, if that.
Huh?
That's running for the new seat. And the young woman said to me, I had to have my tenant, she owns a building, and I didn't want my tenant. He came to me, and she said, I didn't want him growing weed in my building. I just didn't want it. It's legal for him to do that. He has a back issue.
Right.
She didn't want it.
Well,
I said,
if she owns the building, I guess she has.
She has that right. But why would I want to elect someone with that small brain mentality? She doesn't understand the bigger picture. Another guy running is a recovering alcoholic, best friends with the mayor of Boston, who's also in recovery. They both do not understand the difference between CBD and cannabis.
Right.
And that's where we are. That's the story. Young and old, this is why my passion for this program continues to grow, because we're not educating people. We're missing the boat. For whatever reason, people are not understanding and can't make the distinction between hemp and cannabis. And it's a major distinction called THC, and you don't get that in hemp. You will never get high from hemp.
Okay. That's a fascinating story that you brought up from the USA Today. I think it's incredible, the industry growth of legal marijuana and recreational, legal, medical marijuana. I think it's a wonderful thing. It's only going to get better and better, and, I look forward to it.
So you have some great stories that you've put together, some business stories that are making news right now. And tell us about, I'm really thrilled that hemp is being used more in the industrial hemp being used more for materials. And
Absolutely.
I had a very dear friend who used to own French Meadow Bakery and Cafe. Well, she still owns it, but it was a huge, before she sold the frozen breads to another company, she was wearing hemp before it was in. 20 years ago, she had hemp on her body. All of the shirts,
Wonderful.
Everything she did was made from hemp, because it's a wonderful crop. So tell us about this wedding gown story. What a great story.
This is absolutely super, super interesting. As soon as I read this, I said, I have to bring it up on the Frankie Boyer Show today. more hemp-themed weddings are hitting the aisle. This is crazy. This is great. Every bride-to-be wants her wedding to be very special, right? They want different themes.
Absolutely.
They want different ideas. Maybe a wedding in a special environment, or a wedding, on an island, or whatever it might be. Anyway, every bride-to-be wants her wedding to be special. And trying to incorporate cannabis into your festivities is about being really as unique as it gets. With this increasing popularity and legality of hemp and cannabis and marijuana products, trend watchers are predicting that we'll start to see more and more of these elements in mainstream weddings. What do you think about that?
I think it's fascinating, and I'm sure that it's already happening in Colorado, and I'm sure in California as well.
Absolutely. From gowns crafted out of hemp, to marijuana plants in a floral arrangement, which is awesome, to offering guests not only alcohol, but legal recreational marijuana products.
I don't know.
They're finding
it's
more
so
ways
interesting.
to use
It's
cannabis.
interesting
I mean, can you imagine the floral arrangement, the cocktail hours with alcohol, hemp enthused sort of drinks? I would love to go to a marijuana wedding. This is like a dream come true.
Well, the CBD has been used in energy drinks for a very long time, and that makes sense. So edibles can be infused with CBD oil, and they can also be infused with the cannabis. It's a really interesting concept, I have to say. It really
what I find absolutely interesting? More than 67% of 1,000 survey takers voted and said, yeah, I'd love to go to that kind of wedding. Where 22% of them voted and said, no, drugs don't belong at weddings. And then the remainder 11% said, I'm not for or against it. But I think 67% of 1,000, survey takers, 67% is a huge, huge number. I think it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think it would be very interesting. It really would be. Now, if you can put CBD in not lethal doses, but in small doses for dogs and cats, if you can start giving them the product to help with anxiety, it makes sense that it'd be a chilled out wedding.
Absolutely. Can you imagine everybody dancing and having fun and, meeting people and relaxing? I think it's really the weddings of the future. In fact, they're the CEO of and co-founder of Cannabis Wedding Expo, who might be a fun guest for you to get on.
Oh, yeah.
Every year there are more and more weddings where cannabis is incorporated, and they hold this big annual cannabis marijuana bridal show in various cities on the West Coast. So, I can't wait to go to one of these.
I think that would be so much fun. I agree with you. I think it could be really fun. And
I would love to see all the props and all the goodies that they were doing at the weddings.
Absolutely. And I know that they just voted, Massachusetts voted our last election to put legal marijuana and cannabis.
Is that medical marijuana or recreational?
No, non-recreational.
Okay.
And they voted to pass it. It passed. And now the legislators are changing their mind, and they're changing their tune, and they're changing and rewriting the law. And those of us in the state of Massachusetts are absolutely very upset over this, because one of the things that they're not allowing are the farming of hemp. And hemp, as you know, is the future for the farming industry. They're doing it in Kentucky like crazy. Yep. And you have a story for us about Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Right, in New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo wants to treat hemp like all the other New York crops. It's about time this governor has done something right. Governor Andrew Cuomo is making a late-session push to boost the state's budding hemp industry, including a bill that would treat the plant more like every other crop really in New York, which is great.
When we come back, that's really awesome that he's doing that. When we come back, we're talking today to Mark Goldman, part of the Goldman McCormick PR firm, media relations specialist, goldmanmccormick.com. I want to talk about the older Americans and what a huge business this is for baby boomers and plus. Stay tuned. This is Frankie Boyer, Biz Talk Radio. This is Cannabis Talk A to Z with Frankie Boyer. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Everyone's raving about the newest botanical superstar hitting the store shelves nationwide. Hemp-derived cannabidiol, or CBD, has been receiving a lot of attention for its tremendous promise on human health. Plus CBD Oil by CV Sciences is the trusted brand, offering a variety of hemp-derived CBD oil products that you can count on. Join the CBD evolution today. Ask your local natural health retailer about Plus CBD Oil products by CV Sciences and learn more at pluscbdoil.com.
Welcome back. It's Frankie Boyer. And, you know, this is a fascinating conversation because we as Americans are starting to unravel this green movement happening throughout the country. This is Biz Talk Radio. We do a show called Cannabis Talk A to Z with Frankie Boyer here on the show. And joining me today is a PR firm that actually specializes in all PR, but they actually work with cannabis and hemp clients. And Mark Goldman is here from Goldman McCormick PR. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you.
It's very apparent to me that a lot of baby boomers that used to smoke and went away from it for a long time and now are back to it and using it to help with pain, using it to chill at night, using it for a lot of different things. And so it's kind of interesting to see this new surge come through with older Americans and cannabis.
Absolutely. In fact, more and more senior citizens and seniors are using and requesting cannabis to help them out. Concerns about side effects of narcotics and interest in more legal medical choices are leading to more seniors looking into cannabis options, according to a brand new survey. In fact, there's a store called Cannabis and Glass in Spokane, and none of their senior customers interviewed wanted to comment due to concerns about marijuana, lingering social stigma, the current political climate. However, the store staff said from people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s are continuing to grow.
I love it. I love it.
In fact, they have a 93-year-old customer that comes in a couple times a week, they said. She buys, various products. She uses it for her arthritis because she doesn't want to use opiates.
It makes perfect sense, though.
And you know what? As I mentioned in the past, I grew up with Tourette syndrome. I still have Tourette's. And I use marijuana. Unfortunately, it's not legal in New York, but I use marijuana and THC products. And it really, really helps my symptoms.
I bet. I use you as an example of how mainstream needs to understand that you would much prefer using these products than be on a medication that could have deleterious effects for other parts of your health.
And also medication, as you know, makes you fat. So, one of these alternatives would be a much, much better.
Awesome. I have a sister right now struggling with renal failure because of all the medications that she's been on for years and years and years. And so we know that the side effects of these heavy medications that are given out, the drugs, if there can be any kind of a solution without getting into the medications, gosh, you would think people would want that, Mark.
Absolutely. Seems like a no-brainer, really.
It does kind of seem like a no-brainer. Hey, today, coming up this weekend, Nevada is gone green because they have actually passed, and they also, like Massachusetts, were not expecting this to pass on the first ballot, and it got passed. So
Absolutely.
How do you think it's
Vegas
going to...
And Nevada, great city, great state, already doing wonderful things with, and they're so liberal, it's great. And now, as of tomorrow, recreational marijuana will be legal. So
what's this going to do to you? What do you think it's going to do for this state?
You know what? From what I understand, it's going to. I mean, they're already making a ton of money with gambling, with other legal activities. It's just going to make so much more money for the state. It's going to cover all their taxes. It's going to be a great place to live. You can have low taxes, and everything's legal. It's great.
Well, it's also going to bring more tourism, and people now are going to be able to go into these little shops and buy their edibles and legally do what they want to do. So not only what happens in Vegas.
I've been to Amsterdam twice, and they were kind of like I compare it to Hershey with weed.
Yeah. I was just going to say
it was a lot of fun, and Nevada and Vegas is going to be that much better.
Oh yeah, it's going to be wild. It's absolutely how they're going to regulate it though in the clubs and the casinos. It's going to be very interesting because, if anyone does a hemp wedding, it's probably going to be Vegas now, baby.
Hey, you know what? Now you can do an Elvis and hemp wedding. Can you imagine that? Anyway, the newly legalized drug is expected to bring a tourism boom to Las Vegas. Pardon me. And they're thinking about $150 million a year.
Just for a little extra. In
and
the
you know what?
tourism division.
$150 million a year is nearly a quarter of the state's 2018 infrastructure budget. Can you imagine that?
No. So they're going to really clean up with this. They really are.
Absolutely. Until California begins its recreational marijuana dispensing in January 2018, experts are saying Nevada will have the nation's biggest market. It's unclear, however, how many of the 45 million annual tourists in Nevada will be aware of this, aware that it's legal and they're able to light up, since advertisements over there are really banned from any mediums, where at least 30% of the audience is believed to be younger than 21, according to AP. However, you know what? I think a lot of these people are going to get the message out there.
Oh, there's not a doubt that they'll get the message, of course.
The weird thing, though, is, I got to be honest with you, that it's only legal to smoke in private residences. I mean, why wouldn't they let you smoke in parks and things? I don't know.
Well, that's where it is. That's the way it's written in most places. You're not allowed to smoke publicly. Right. I'd rather somebody smoking in the park than inside a house, but that's just me. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's going to make it won't affect the casinos, the partying and all of that, but it will. I don't know. There's that double-edged sword where if the kids are going to have more opportunity to smoke weed, then are they going to not spend as much in the casinos when it comes to drinking? And that's going to be a big, interesting. That was one of the big questions they had before it became legal.
Absolutely, should be interesting.
It should be interesting
I think the
see.
Last story of today is pain patients overwhelmingly prefer medical marijuana over opiates. Big story in America today.
So you can understand why.
Absolutely. It goes back to the story we spoke about earlier today with the senior citizens. When patients have a choice between opiates and medical marijuana for a painful condition, it's overwhelmingly a majority say they prefer marijuana. It just works well, has fewer side effects, and it's just better for you, a new survey finds. Through the survey, Frankie, involving close to 3,000 medical cannabis patients, didn't track actual drug use or efficiency. The finding fits with previous data. Decades of research suggest marijuana is a vector for pain treatment, and recent studies have found that in other states with medical marijuana availability, there are fewer opiate overdose deaths, and doctors fill fewer opiate prescriptions. That's huge news and wonderful for our country.
Yeah. We are out of time. This has been so much fun, and just know that number again as we started out, $6.7 billion on legal marijuana products in 2016, up 34% from 2015. This is a real business.
Please, everybody, check out hemppublicrelations.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark, and we'll be back in a moment. It's Frankie Boyer. Stay tuned. of green, the green future. Joining me for the next half hour is Kathleen O'Bannon. Kathleen O'Bannon is an author, an educator, and a chef. She has been involved in natural products for many decades as a teacher, as a practitioner, and her book is called The Anger Cure. It's an important book. And before we get into the topic of hemp and cannabis, Kathleen is one of those people that really educates us about the importance of waking up in the morning and to put balance back in your life. Eating within the first half hour is a very important step in all of our lives, and it will change your mood, your attitude. It is so powerful just putting good, nutrient-dense food in your body within the first half hour of waking up. And Kathleen O'Bannon, you talk about this extensively in The Anger Cure.
Yes, it's one of my favorite topics.
So, we're talking about cannabis and hemp, but it's very important for people. We always have heard that breakfast is the most important meal, but there's something about the importance of getting up in the morning and truly fueling your body. And you say the spleen really needs it more than anything else. Tell us why.
So the idea is that food equals energy. No food equals no energy. So consequently, when you've gone all night without having any food, you're not going to have any energy. That's why we call the first meal of the day break the fast, which has been shortened to be called breakfast. However, if you try to make your body work without taking in any real food, if you rely on sugar, caffeine, or nicotine, you're going to be up and down, and be exhausted by the end of the day. But if when you get up you have some food to stabilize your blood sugar levels, then you will not have that same exhaustion problem. And it's kind of interesting because there used to be a television commercial where the woman bragged that she didn't have enough time to eat breakfast. And I wanted to throw a tomato at the TV screen when I saw that. How could she brag? But what she was also selling on her commercial was some kind of liquid yogurt type drink or something. And so she came out of a fancy house, got in a fancy car, wore fancy clothes, but didn't eat breakfast, the most important part. But
yeah.
I am exceedingly familiar with cannabis because my late husband, Jerry Mandel, who was an accountant, he said when he was a child, which would have been in the 40s, he was given cannabis for his asthma. As a child in the 40s, they were giving cannabis to children. Now, what I never asked him was whether he smoked it or not, because when I did a lot of research and took some classes about setting up dispensaries in California, one of the things that they showed were loads and loads of pictures of over-the-counter medicine, many of which were liquid, that all contained cannabis for stomach aches, for headaches, for muscle tension, for all kinds of different things. There used to be a non-prescription, over-the-counter pharmaceutical that contained cannabis. Then people got a little weary of it, and I won't go into the politics of that because I'm sure somebody's talked about that.
Oh, absolutely. We've talked about reefer madness. We talked about reefer madness, yes.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny because I think it was Thomas Jefferson who actually he grew hemp, actually. He didn't grow cannabis, but he did grow hemp. So we're looking at a huge history of it in this country, but in the 60s, we did not have what they now call buds. Everybody just used the leaves. And there was something that was called the Thai stick, as in it came from Thailand, and it was a bamboo stick with branches. It was only about 6 inches, I think, something not very big, with branches of marijuana leaves, which they would snap off the end of the branch and tie them with a string around this bamboo stick until they dried out, and it was and that's what people used to get. There's along with Acapulco Gold, which was a kind that came from Mexico, but it was always leaves. Now we've gotten really sophisticated. I have in front of me a postcard I got at a cannabis dispensary in Michigan that says there are thousands of ailments treated by medical marijuana. And I myself, when I was a nutritionist in a clinic for 40 years, I've been a nutritionist 40 years, didn't work in a clinic that long, but we actually used to prescribe for people to use marijuana when they had severe pain. And it's interesting that now it's coming out how well it works for pain. It's we've gone up and down. We used to have it over the counter, and it was in little bottles, and you could just take it. And then it was illegal, and now people are getting wise to the idea that this is a healing plant. It can heal thousands of diseases.
I'm so excited to have you on to talk about it, because my problem is the stigma that is still associated with this plant, Kathleen, and for whatever reason, it is having such a negative impact. And I was just sharing with my guest before you came on, Mark Goldman, about the political flavor in my own community in Boston, a very hip community where legalization has been on the books for medical marijuana for years. It's taken them 4.5 years to open 5 dispensaries. That's how long. It's been a terrible situation. They weren't expecting recreational marijuana to be passed, and it did pass. And now they're trying to change the rules. And when you talk to the young politicians and young people running for office, they're so blinded. They don't even know the difference between hemp and cannabis. They don't know what a CBD is. They don't understand this language, this conversation. And until we can clarify the distinctions, we're not going to be able to educate people for the benefits. And that's the stigma. Terrible. It's terrible.
But the one thing that I found the most interesting was the number of articles you can find on the internet, medical journal, peer-reviewed articles. We're not talking about things in High Times or in The Culture, the two biggest marijuana magazines. We're talking about medical journal articles showing how well cannabis works for pain. There are articles talking about the amount of addiction to opioids has been greatly reduced since in the states where they've legalized medical marijuana. So people are taking an innocent, natural plant, and they have control over the dose by how much they take it and how they take it, and they are reducing the amount of opioid-addicted people in the states where medical marijuana is legal. That's the most wonderful thing I've ever heard, because the marijuana is not dangerous to your body, but the opioids really are. And so I'm real excited that there's a lot of action for the medical marijuana. Now, mind you, I was a college student in the 60s, and I'll have to confess, I only took marijuana twice in the 60s. I was too busy working, going to school, and I was a professional singer. So I didn't let any smoke come past my throat, no matter what it was, because I was a professional classical singer. And but at any rate, I can say that almost everyone I know who has had cancer and used cannabis to relieve the pain and the nausea has recovered greatly from I wish I could say the cannabis cured the cancer, but I can't say that. But the people who used it, who had cancer and used the cannabis, they had great relief of pain.
Absolutely, absolutely. We will be back in a moment with the author of Sprouts and, yes, the Anger Cure, numerous books. Kathleen O'Bannon, health coach, amazing teacher and chef. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Frankie Boyer. This is Biz Talk Radio, Cannabis Talk A to Z with Frankie Boyer.
Sound.com.
Welcome back, Frankie Boyer, and always interesting conversation on Cannabis Talk A to Z with a spin toward educating all of us. Kathleen O'Bannon, the author of The Anger Cure, is our guest, and we've been talking with Kathleen about the use of cannabis for many illnesses. And you know, Kathleen, CBD might be the answer to get people with a little THC, but mostly CBD, the hemp, for the veterans that are suffering from opioid addiction.
Yes, I have a friend in Colorado whose main mission as a veteran is going around and getting veterans associations and groups around the country to encourage veterans who are wounded to use medical marijuana. And they actually pay her to go around and give these big talks. And she's a super woman, and it's really exciting that they're getting her to do this, because can you imagine how many veterans who are injured in the act of being in the service, and that could happen almost anywhere with a person in the service, how much they can be better off with their pain and their things that go wrong with them by using cannabis instead of drugs that will affect their liver and cause huge problems for them. I used to work in a clinic for years as a nutritionist, and I can tell you that the Anger Cure book has everything you need to know to be healthy, but I do not have anything about marijuana in it. The publisher wouldn't allow it. But I did have a friend who was a doctor in the clinic with me who wrote a book called Stoned, The Truth About Medical Marijuana and Hemp Oil, Dr. Forsyth. And he has a book, and I see that there are quite a few of them on the internet available, a book that will tell you exactly which strain to use of the plant for your particular disease.
Yes,
which
yes.
I find it's really exciting. It means
Very exciting.
You can go into a dispensary, ask for a specific strain, get the buds or the can of butter, which is one of the better ways to use the cannabis, is to make canna butter, which I made quite a lot with fresh leaves several years ago in California when I took a class in how to make canna butter. And it's pretty simple. All you do is soak the leaves in butter, heat it up. It's sort of easy. But once you have the butter that's been infused with cannabis, which you can make yourself, you'll be able to use it for all sorts of things, cookies, banana bread, put it use it. Of course, you wouldn't want to fry anything in it because that would be heating it up too high. You wouldn't use it to cook with, but you would add it into food as you're making it. So when they bake cookies with canna butter in it, you can have a small bit of the cookie, a mouthful or so. You chew it up really, really well, and this is where most people go wrong. When you take an edible with cannabis in it, and you chew a mouthful of it, as long as you can hold it in your mouth, chew it and chew it and chew it, keep it in your mouth, chew it and chew it, because it goes right directly into your bloodstream when it's in your mouth and under your tongue, and then swallow it. Don't eat a whole cookie all at once or you'll fall out in a stupor, which is what my niece did.
That's actually part of the problem, is that people are not understanding edibles, and that, it's a big problem.
And of course, because we've been so brainwashed with the drug companies and big pharma, of how to do it and take pills and keep taking it and all of that sort of stuff, when in reality the more natural things like the medical marijuana and canna butter products and so forth, you hardly need any at all to get the effect of pain relief and the relief of hundreds of, well, actually it says thousands of ailments and things you wouldn't even think of, like Lyme disease. And I mean, there are just thousands of diseases. My problem is I don't see my disease listed on this card I got that tells thousands of ailments. But I'm about to go get this book from Dr. Forsyth. It's called Stone, and look it up and look up and see. I have a rare genetic lung disease. So for me, smoking something is not advisable.
Right.
I prefer not to use smoke because fire, for me, because I have a genetic lung disease, I don't like that. That's why the edibles were so good. And
it's not just the
so well.
Yeah, it's not just the edibles. It's also there are vapors. There's all of these different delivery systems that could really be very helpful. And we've talked to so many young entrepreneurs, and that's what this show is about. And, you know, Kathleen, you were talking earlier about finding the right strain. There's a company called Medicinal Genomics, and that's what they're doing. They're looking at the DNA of cannabis and trying to find the right form of cannabis for you. It's fascinating.
What other plant that they use to make drugs from has as much variety as the marijuana or cannabis? No other plant. If you look at foxglove or you look at digitalis, those plants only do one thing. But the marijuana plant has thousands of things it can work on, which is really exciting, because then you don't have to worry about prescribing and diagnosing for yourself. You'll know that there will be something simple you can use in the form of cannabis that will help no matter what your problem is. And I find that super exciting. It's almost like going back to nature. Well, I guess it is going back to nature. I prefer not to take drugs, and I can assure you that many of my patients that I do nutrition counseling on, I suggest to them when they need something that would be medical marijuana, but of course I can't sell it. Here where I live now in Michigan, they have dispensaries, and that's where I send people, because I know which ones have which products.
We are going to rely on Kathleen O'Bannon's expertise down the road, and we thank you for coming on today. The Anger Cure, it's an amazing book. You can find it on Amazon. Thank you so much for being with us today. We will see you next time right here on the Frankie Boyer Show. For Biz Talk Radio, this is Cannabis Talk A to Z. Make it a great day, and as always, smile.